Hey friends, welcome to my channel. Today I have 29 happy summer home decor ideas to share with all of you. Now let's get crafting. Now I know I'm not the only one that sees a lot of these kind of signs at their thrift store. I got this one half off and I am going to turn it into something really cool and functional for organizing things in your craft room, in your kitchen, wherever you want to put it. I just took it outside after I took off the metal hardware on the back, spray painted it a tan color, and then I'm going to take some of these baskets from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to create some hole marks where I know I want to drill out for both of these baskets. And I'm going to have 4 for each basket. That way, so once I'm all done drilling my holes, I can come back in with some zip ties and really easily fasten it to this board. I love doing organization DIYs like this because it seriously costs me hardly anything. And if you tried to buy something like this from the store, they really are so expensive. It doesn't have to cost a lot to have a functional, beautiful home. It just takes a couple of bucks and some imagination and being willing to do these projects. So once I've got it all zip tied on, I came back in with some of these metal tags that I found on Amazon. I'll link them down below. I just think these are so cool. And I'm just going to zip tie that right on. And then to finish off the look and to give it a little bit of that farmhouse feel, I'm going to dry brush on some white paint and hang it up with my metal on the back to display things or organize things in my home. Now for this DIY, we are going to be taking this printable of these 3 lemons blown up in size and 1 of these Dollar Tree canvas boards. I'm going to cut out all 3 of these lemons and I'm going to stick really close to the edging of the lemon. You don't want any white to be on it. Once I have all of them cut out, you're going to also need to take a craft knife and cut out those tiny little areas where there is white still. And I went ahead and just popped those out. And then I put on some white paint with 1 little dot of black paint. I'm going to mix that together because we want a little bit of a streaking look, and that little dot of black paint is going to allow that to happen. I'm just going to keep streaking those lines because we're going to make this look like a shiplap board. Once I had that to a place I liked it to be, I went ahead and dried it with my heat gun. And now I'm coming back in with a Sharpie pen. These are my favorite Sharpie pens, by the way. I'll link them down below. And then I'm going to add on my lemons with a nice coat of Mod Podge. Remember, don't forget to put some hairspray on the printables first so that they don't bleed on you, and allow them to really dry before you start using them. That's going to keep it from bleeding any of the ink. And then after that, I went ahead and just sealed all of my lemons on. And now I'm going to add on some lettering. Again, friends, I want to encourage you, have fun with lettering. I really love hand painting on my projects. I have been doing it for years and I just find it so therapeutic. I just could sit here forever just working on these letters and just painting them. I just find them so fun. And I hear it all the time where friends are saying, I just don't feel like my handwriting is great. But mine wasn't either. I just have always just kept practicing and kept playing with it until I got it to a place that I liked. And there's so many great calligraphy books out there where you can practice. It's a great gift to pick up for yourself to practice when you have some downtime. Once I went over my letters a couple times to give it a nice font, thick, dark lining on it, I flicked on some little speckles of paint. And now I'm coming back in with my dark brown to give her that rusting look. I'm adding in a little bit more distressing where the shiplap lines are. And at this point, I've gotten it to a place where I'm really happy with it and it's ready to be displayed. For this DIY, we're going to be using this glass jar from the Dollar Tree, some of these oats that I picked up from Hobby Lobby, and then we're going to be working with an orange color. First, I took my jar outside and I just gave it a nice spray paint coat of white. And now I'm going to create a buffalo check or gingham, whichever you prefer to call it, pattern on the jar. So I'm going to take that orange first and I'm going to lighten it with some white. And it's going to make more of a peachy orange color first, which I just think this is so pretty when you pair it up with the lemons and the mint that I'm using throughout this video. And I just use my heat gun gently over it. Don't hold it too long on a glass surface because it can crack the jar. But I'm just going to come back in after going vertically. Now I'm going horizontally, and I'm just creating this nice grid pattern with my brush. Once I've gotten all around, I'm going to come back in with the original orange color before I added the white, and I'm going to fill in the squares where the lines cross into each other. Once I had that all done and it was dried, I went ahead and got my oats and I just went ahead and cut them down, and I'm going to put them in the jar. And I love this because I feel like summertime lends well into these type of dried oats, because then it can kind of roll into the beginning of fall as well. So once it was all done, it's ready to be displayed. This next DIY is so easy to make, and they charge so much for these at the store. So I've got some fabric, some lamb's ear, some lemons from the Dollar Tree, a long skewer stick, a couple of them, and then I'm going to take one of these garlands from Hobby Lobby, and I'm only going to use half of it. You could use the whole thing, but I'm only going to use half of it because I want it to be the length of my dining room table. So now I'm going to just do a little cut and rip down my fabric. And then on one of the branches of this lamb's ear plant, I'm going to go ahead and pull off all of those leaves. And now, with only using half of that garland, the boxwood garland from Hobby Lobby, I went ahead and I'm taking my fabric and I'm just going to do a simple knot right onto the fabric. And I'm just going to play with it and glue it just a little bit in place, and I'm going to go all the way down the garland. Now I'm coming in with the lamb's ear and I'm kind of weaving it into the boxwood to make it look like it's all one big plant. And I'm going to work that all the way down the whole garland. And now I'm going to take my long skewer sticks, I'm going to cut them down to size, dig a hole into the lemon, add some glue, put the stick back in, and then I'm going to add some glue to the stick. This is going to allow the lemon to be able to be glued into this garland piece. If you don't do it, the lemons are just going to pop right out because they have a waxy texture to these lemons. So once I did that, I went ahead and placed my lemons where I wanted, and it was ready to be displayed. Our supplies for this DIY are going to be 3 of these 8x10 canvases, some rope, and then a hard sign that you can pick up from the Dollar Tree. In fact, all of these are coming from the Dollar Tree, as well as some thicker tongue depressor popsicle sticks. We're going to be using all of these supplies to create a beautiful, bright, and coastal looking crate. Now you can paint these whatever color you want, but I just thought this coral color, when you see the finished look, is going to be so pretty for the summertime to use, and you could even take it over into the fall time as well, and technically in the springtime too. So you can see there that I removed the canvas fabric. I always like to keep the canvas fabric, but I pull off the sides just because those are bent and stapled. So I always just put that to the side to keep it, and then the scraps I throw them away. And now I'm going to take that frame, the wood frame, and I'm going to make my mark line, and I'm going to use my craft knife to score this board, and it'll snap really easy. I scored it 3 times, and then once you've got it snapped, you're going to want to cut off any extra hangover that you can see here that I'm needing to cut off. And sometimes you have to turn the board over a little bit to make sure you get it all. I just keep rotating it until I get every part where it's nice and smooth. Now we're going to take our hot glue and we are going to glue that board down onto the frame, or the frame onto the board. And now we're going to take those tongue depressor sticks. So here I am, I'm going to match 2 up together to start, and I'm just going to cut off the tops of the rounded part of them. We don't want those parts, we want them to be nice and flat. And then once I've got that, those are going to be our supports to build up our crate. But we're going to just go ahead and just take more sticks, and we're going to keep cutting them all down, because we are going to need 16 of these. The 16 are going to allow us to be able to double them up so that the support is really strong. You could get away with doing 8, but I highly recommend, if you're building a crate, you want it to last long term. So go ahead and cut 16 of these, because then what we're going to do next is we are going to be gluing 2 together so that they're really strong and sturdy. This is going to allow the crate, like I said, over time to not have any issues with anything being in it and not being able to support it. We want it to be able to be strong enough. Now we're going to take those sticks that we have created where we're doubling them up, and we're going to glue them into the corner, and then we're going to use our staple gun. I use this thing all the time. I'll link it down below in my description box if you want to see the one that I'm using. And then, so you can see here, I'm putting them in the corners. I'm going on one side and the other side so that every corner is covered with these sticks that we have doubled up. And I'm just using 2 staples on each and every single one. And now at this point, once you've got your frame, you're going to see that these are nice and snug and secure and really strong. I'm going to start sliding on my extra 2 frames. I'm going to take one to the middle point and one up at the top. Make sure you add your hot glue in there to really make sure you're securing it, and then also add in those staples. Now at this point, we're going to create a pretty coral color. I didn't have a coral on me, and it's really easy to make coral. You just take some white, some orange, and a pink, and then add back in some more white if you feel like it's still going to be too dark, and then just simply mix it all together, and it makes the prettiest color. So again, orange, pink, and white, and you just mix, mix, mix until you get it to the look and desire that you want. Now I wanted it to be a really bright coral color. I thought this was going to be so pretty somewhere in my home. So in fact, while I was mixing this color, my daughter Miriam kept saying, "So are you making that for me? Are you making that for my room? Can I put my toys in it?" So I have a feeling she might hijack this if I try to decorate with it. It might end up in her room because she loved the color so much. But I'm just going to give it 2 nice coats of this color, making sure it's nice and polished and finished. And then on the bottom, I painted it white because I wanted to have a nice finished look at the bottom. So here I am, I'm just taking some of this ticking stripe that's blue and tan, and I'm just going to add that around to make sure that any staples where I stapled the frame to the base, that doesn't scratch a table. It'll have a nice finished look at that point. Now I'm going to take some of the rope from the Dollar Tree. I'm just wrapping it around, and then to create a really nice nautical finished handle, I'm taking another piece of twine and I'm wrapping it around. You can see here that I start with a little bit of hot glue and then I just wrap, wrap, wrap. Like I'm rapping, that was funny. And then I'm just going to glue it off and finish that look, and you're ready to display it somewhere in your home. For this DIY, I found this tiny bucket. I thought this was so cute, and the coloring of the bucket was so farmhouse perfect that I did not want to do anything to the bucket, but I wanted to make it look more like a high-end summer. This could even go into fall because of how neutral the colors are. I thought this would be so pretty to have in my home for this next several months to put up and display. So I'm going to just put some foam inside, a dowel stick, and then a round foam ball at the top. And you can see that I put in the moss around the bottom inside the basket. And now up at the top for that ball, I'm just going to take off all of these hydrangea flower petals off of the handle. And I poked a hole in the styrofoam ball, and I'm just adding some hot glue in so they stay in nice and tight and in place. And then I'm going to just add some glue and put that ball right back onto the stick. You can see how this seriously took me maybe at tops about 5 minutes. I don't even think it was that. It was so fast. And now I'm going to take one of these little tag signs. I just can't help myself, friends. If you've been here a long time, you know I love these signs, these little tags. And I'm just going to glue that right onto the front of the basket because it just gives it a little something farmhouse, even more to the front. And then I'm going to take some twine because why not? I love twine too. I tied a double loop bow, and I'm going to glue that right onto the stick to complete the look, and it's ready to be displayed. For this DIY, I'm going to be taking this wood round from the Dollar Tree's craft section. I'm going to cut off the twine, and I'm going to patch this hole because I'm going to be turning this into a lemon slice. Once I had that patched, I went ahead and came in with my sandpaper after it had dried for a little bit, and now I'm going to add on my yellow. I'm using more of a mustardy yellow color. And now I'm going to use a thin white brush to create my lines. So I did a circle and then a couple of different lines, and now I'm bringing in that element that makes it look like a lemon. So you can see that towards the top of these, we're going to call them pizza slices. You can see that I'm kind of curving in that corner to create that look of a lemon. And then at the end, you can distress it however you would like, and you have a darling lemon. For this DIY, we're going to be using this printable and this printable, and we are going to be making miniature lemon boats. Now for all of my printables, I always like to shoot a little bit of hairspray on it because it really does lock in that ink from my printer. Once that's off, sitting and drying to the side, I'm going to cut my lemons a little bit bigger than half apart from one another, because I want it to be a little bit thicker on one side. The other part was just a little bit. Once I've got them separated, I'm going to take some sandpaper and I'm just going to sand down that foam to smooth it all out. Now I'm going to take these printables. I know that many of us have scrapbook paper on hand, but if you're a new crafter, I thought that it would be fun to give you some pattern paper to work with. You're going to go ahead and add some hot glue and then press that right down onto a piece of the paper, and then I'm going to use my piece of sandpaper and just sand until I get a nice clean edge. Now I'm going back in with the printable that I have for you, and I'm going to cut down 2 triangles from this same pattern. We want to have a triangle that reverses the pattern on the back side because we're making the little sails. And I want to make sure the pattern is on both sides of the sail so you don't see the white cardstock on the back. Once I had those sails all cut out, I took my skewer stick and I'm just going to poke a hole, once I've cut it down to size, down to the middle of that lemon. And I'm just going to make sure it's nice and leveled. And then at this point, I glue it down into the lemon, and now I'm going to add on the sail. So I'm just going to add a little bit of hot glue, press that down, and then I'm going to flip it over on the back side, add some more glue, and apply the other part, the back side of that pattern that we cut out earlier, and press everything down and nice into place so you don't see any seams or cracks. Once those are done, I went back over to another part of the printable, which was this little banner flag that has stripes and it says summer on it. I went ahead and cut that out, and you're going to notice on that printable, on the striped lines, I have a little black outline on it so you know where to cut so you don't cut it wrong. And then you're just going to fold it in half, and then you're going to curl it around the skewer stick and just hot glue it down into place and add another flag to it. And then one last thing, I added 2 clear circles at the bottom with my hot glue so it'd have a nice stand to stand up. This project is going to be using this printable, and we're going to be using this buffalo check black and white paper. And we're going to take this wooden heart from the Dollar Tree, pop off the tag and the sticker, and then we're going to give it a coat of black paint. Now you can paint this whatever color you want, but I wanted it to match the printable that I had. And so I'm going to go ahead and give it 1 coat of black paint, and once it was dry, I'm going to take the printable. I put some hairspray on it first to lock in the ink, and now I'm going to kind of do a rough sketch around it so I can lessen the bulk of the paper. I'm going to add some hot glue, rub that on with my brayer. I love using this tool. I use it all the time whenever I'm trying to flatten out things to get a nice smooth surface. And then I'm going to take my sanding block from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to sand it until the edges neatly come off. Then I'm going to take an even rougher sandpaper, and I'm just going to buff out the edges and make it look more farmhouse, and it's ready to be displayed. This DIY is super simple. I find baskets like this all the time at my thrift stores, and they are honestly one of my favorite things to pick up. Now, I always get things half off. I go on the days where there's half off sales. So I'm going to start by just removing these handles from my buckets, and then I'm going to take them outside and I'm going to spray paint them this beautiful blue color. I thought this color was so pretty. I love how it looks against the white. So I'm now going back in with some white paint that's acrylic with my paintbrush, and I'm just going around the rim, and then I'm going to add in a little bit of distressing so that way it has a very summery feel to it. I just love how this looks with the distressing on it, and you can see that I'm coming in with a grayish brown color and really distressing the areas where it would get a lot of wear and tear. And I think that this really adds so much personality to the bucket when you do this. Now I'm coming in and I'm dry brushing it, but then I'm taking a paper towel and I'm really rubbing it in and helping it soak into the bucket itself. Then last, I just put the handles back on, and I will be using it to display towels in my bathroom. For this DIY, I'm going to be taking this Crock container, and I loved the color. I didn't even touch it. I'm just going to take a piece of foam and I'm going to cut it down to size, and I don't want it to fall down inside the container, so I want it to be really tight in the neck of this crock. So I'm just kind of trimming it a little bit where I need to and rounding the sides so that it will fit really tightly in there. And I'm just going to shove that down in without letting it fall all the way down and through. I didn't use any glue, I just pushed it down in there. And now I'm going to take some of this tall grass that you can get from the Dollar Tree during this season, and I am going to separate them from the handle that they come on, take something to poke a whole bunch of holes inside of that foam, and then I'm going to come back in with my hot glue and put those right inside of those holes. Now remember, when you get the hot glue on the grass, it will want to melt the grass, so make sure you stay towards the bottom where the paper wrapped around the grass is. Then at this point, I'm going to add in some hot glue and some of this moss to go around the grass. I just think that this looks so high-end and so beautiful. They sell stuff like this so expensive at high-end stores, and it is just costing me a couple of bucks. Then to finish off the look, I'm going to take some of this gray gingham ribbon and I'm going to wrap it around and tie on a knotted ribbon. This DIY is going to be using some of these doilies from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using 2 of them because I'm going to be making 2 miniature bouquets of flowers. And then I'm going to take some of this craft wrapping paper, I'm going to cut it down to about a square or a rectangle size, and then I'm going to, you can see the fan was on in my craft room and it was blowing the doily all over the place. Once I've got that glued down, I went ahead and cut it down to size, and now I'm going to scroll it up so it resembles a wrapped up piece of paper around a bundle of flowers. And then I'm just going to glue that into place. Now at this point I decided to rough up the edges at the top just a little bit so it looks like it's kind of curling over. And once I got it to a place that I liked it, I went ahead and added some twine, and then I tied on a bow and hot glued it on so it didn't slide off over time, and then I just cut down the twine ends so it's not too long. And then at this point we can go ahead and take a piece of foam. I'm going to add some hot glue after I've cut it down to size so it fits down inside of our little paper. And then we're going to just add our florals. Now you can add whatever you want. I went with daisies for this since my theme is yellow in this video and I'm doing a lot of lemons. But you go ahead and just add whatever flowers you want to it and it's ready to use on your tray. This DIY is going to be using this printable where we are going to be using the little scale clock. Now we're going to need 2 of these cups that they have at the Dollar Tree and then 2 of these mini squares also from the Dollar Tree. Now yes, I know my E6000 is at the end of its life, but friends, I squeeze every drop out every single time. I'm a very frugal crafter. So once I've got my E6000 and hot glue for a short-term and long-term hold, I went ahead and applied it to the bottom silver cup, and then I put on the clear cup on top. Now we're going to be making a miniature scale for a tiered tray. We're going to take that printable with the scale, we're going to cut it out after we've spray painted our cup white, and then we're going to simply glue it on, and you can style it with whatever you want for your tiered tray. I personally love these miniature buckets from the Dollar Tree. I always get them in the wedding section. I'm going to make a miniature bouquet bucket. I thought that this would be so farmhouse cute for my tiered tray. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just going to stuff it with some foam to make sure that I can stick my flowers into so they don't come out. So I went ahead and glued the foam all down into the bucket, and now I'm coming in with some yellow, green, and then some of these white sunflowers. I think that's what they are, but I just love how they looked with the yellow, the white, and the green. I thought it looked so cute all together. Now you can use any florals on this, but I just think these are so cute, this little bucket. And there are stores that sell these for like $5 to $7, which is crazy because I'm doing this for about 50 cents. For this DIY, we are going to be using this printable right here, and we are going to cut out the bicycle paper. I'm going to be using one of these wood plaques from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to use it to cut out my lines, or trace them out better yet, and then I'm going to just cut right on the line so I can get the right sizing for my wood plaque. And we're going to be making a miniature sign for my tiered tray, and I'm just going to add some Mod Podge down first to be able to glue it on. And once I've got a nice thick coat of it, I went ahead and lined up my printable. And remember, I always like to add a little bit of hairspray first because it locks in the ink and then it doesn't make it smear whenever you use Mod Podge. I just don't want it to have that bleed any of those colors. And then I basically came back in after it was all dry with some brown paint, and I just distressed the edges lightly to give it that cute farmhouse look. For this DIY, we're going to be using this printable, and we're going to cut out the lemon sign, and we are going to first paint one of these wooden plaques from the Dollar Tree, a nice coat of white paint, and then with some Mod Podge, we're going to go ahead and stick on that sign right in the middle. I love that it had a white border around it. I thought it really made it stand out and just looks so pretty. And then I went ahead and sealed it all in, and it was ready to be displayed. We are now going to be using this fresh lemon tag sign, and we're going to cut down the sides so that it fits onto this wood plaque. It's going to cut off a little bit of the F, which is okay. I actually like the way that it looked on this wooden tag, but I'm going to go ahead and cut off an angle on one side and then cut off an angle on the other side. I just took the same piece and reversed it, so I made sure I got the same cut on both sides. And then I know at this point I'm now going to trace where I cut those lines for my tag with my wood, so that way I can cut this with my new tool. Now I have to give a review on this tool. I will say that this tool does so wonderful at cutting popsicle sticks, but I will say that it is a little bit harder to cut this particular wood. I felt like it did do a good job getting the initial cut going down into it, but I definitely had to work with it. This wood is a lot thicker than a popsicle stick, where you really have to kind of wiggle it around a little bit to get it to cut and to break. But it did do a good job where I didn't have to pull out my miter box. But you can see here that I'm having to push down pretty hard to get that cut. So if you're looking to cut a bunch of popsicle sticks, by all means, it definitely does a great job for popsicle sticks because they're a little bit thinner than the thickness of these particular wood pieces. But I definitely will say that I would not be using this on painter sticks at all. But you can see here that I can get enough off where I can come back in with my scissors and cut a little extra. And then at this point, I now can add my tag. And I definitely like the tool. Like I said, the verdict is still out. I still have to play with it a little bit more and see what I feel about it, but I do like it. I picked it up because I saw a lot of my friends here on YouTube using it, and I thought I would give it a try. Now you can see here with my Crop-A-Dile that it goes through the wood so easily. It's one of the reasons why I love the Crop-A-Dile, because the spring system on it just never hurts my hand. Once I had my hole in for my tag, I went ahead and added in a ribbon to give that cute farmhouse summery look. I'm just going to do a loop, pull it through the hole, and pull it nice and tight. And then the very end is I just distressed the edges a little bit, and it was ready to be displayed. We need 2 frames, some rope, and then we're going to be using some different paint, white and blue. This fabric, I had pulled it, but I ended up not using it in the end, and you'll see what I'm going to be doing. And then 2 pictures to put inside your frames. So we are going to be taking the rope, and the trick with this is that you want to first put the rope on and then kind of curl it out towards the inside of the frame. So you're going along that inner part of the frame versus having that gold showing where you can see that it is a frame that's not just wrapped all in rope. I felt like that made it really look polished and finished. And then when you go around the corners, play with the rope, bend it and manipulate it before you glue it down, so that way it really does take that curve nicely versus you're struggling with it and it doesn't look like it's sitting in there nicely. And then when you get to the sides on the ends, I untwisted my rope just a little bit on those spots so that way it spread out the rope some to cover it up even better. And then I went back with the twist again and brought it around that curve. So you're gonna see me do it right here. I stretched it out and then I'm gonna keep it twisted again and come around that side. This really does finish the look and make it look really polished and high end. So at the point when you're in the end spot, you're just gonna take it and bring it around the back, flatten it out a little bit, and then here it is nice and covered with all the rope. Now we could leave it like this and put our two frames together, or we can make it look something really special and custom, which is what we're going to be doing next. So on the inside, I really wanted to make sure that you can only see the rope, so I decided to add just a little bit of that white like you saw. And now I'm going to lay the frames right next to each other so that the rope is taped off at the exact same spots on both of the frames. And then I'm going to take some white paint and I'm going to massage that into the rope, making sure that I get all of those crevices and all of those teeny tiny little nooks and crannies that can be a little tricky to paint when it comes to rope. So just make sure you just keep tapping it in and keep adding in paint as you go. Now I really think this is so pretty. This really does remind me of being down at the beach. Sometimes they do paint rope down on those piers and it just looks so pretty when you see the rope painted in some spots and then you have the regular natural rope. I really love how this looks. So once we're done with all the white, we're going to actually add on another color. And the cool thing about this, you can add on whatever color you would like. Since I'm going very nautical for this DIY, we're going to be adding on a really pretty American blue. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to position my tape, making sure they're at the exact same spots so that they all look nice and even. And then I'm just going to cut it and wrap them around because I want to make 2 blue stripes on each of the frames going down, which will really make it look high end, something that you would pick up at maybe Pottery Barn around the summertime. So here I am, I'm just wrapping it around nice and tight, and then make sure you tap it down into all those little crevices of the rope because you don't want it to bleed on accident. It could really mess up the project. So here I am, I'm at the very end, and now I can add in a really pretty blue. Again, you can do whatever color you want, but I love this blue color right now. I've just been really digging on it, and so I've been using it a lot in my DIYs. So again, we're going to press down the tape and then just keep tapping it into the spots. And then once you've got both of those frames done, you can go ahead and take off the tape and it's going to reveal the coolest look to these frames. Now, you could just always put the backers on them and stand them up somewhere on a shelf or a bookcase, wherever you want to put them. But I decided I wanted to have them hanging with each other. I thought this would be really pretty to hang up in a home somewhere. So I'm taking off the tape at this point, and then I'm going to make sure that, again, these frames are going to be perfectly aligned. I think that is the trick with this. So on the back side, when I put the frame back together, I cut off the support leg because we're not going to need that, and then I just glued it down so that way when it's up against a wall hanging up, it's not going to have this thing that can keep flapping and moving around. And then I'm not going to change out these pictures ever because I really want this to be a memory that we preserve for our family when we went to the beach. And I am just putting those in with a little bit of hot glue, and I'm just simply securing them. And now I can flip it over. I added a top hanging rope so that way I can hang it up somewhere in my home. And then I'm going to take 2 more pieces, and you can see that I'm flattening them out so this lays really nice and flat against the wall. And I'm gluing them all down. And then make sure again that the frames are perfectly aligned so that way it's not hanging crooked, because that could be such a bummer. You went through all that work and then it's crooked. So here I am, I'm just adding in the last little bit of the rope to complete the look, and then you are ready to hang it up somewhere in your home. For this DIY, we are going to be using one of these canvas frames, as well as this printable. And you can go ahead and start by removing the canvas from the wood frame. I always like to save that part of the canvas because I use it for other projects. They're great to paint on. And then once I had that middle part all gone, I went ahead and ripped off all the other stuff around it, pulled out the extras with my pliers, and got it down to just the wood and the staples. Now I'm coming in with some brown paint first, and then I'm going to dry brush on some white paint. After I had that all how I wanted it to look, giving it that nice farmhouse look, I'm going to take my printable. I traced it around the frame. I didn't show that part. I forgot to get that part in here in the video, but I went ahead and cut it down to the size I needed for the frame. I added my hot glue and I took my brayer and I went ahead and just smoothed it all out. And now I'm going to take my frame and I'm just going to glue that right onto that foam core and the printable. Now I'm going to be taking these larger popsicle sticks, these large, I guess, tongue depressor sticks. I picked these up at Walmart, and I'm going to go ahead and cut them down to size because I want it to look like a crate on the lemons, like the lemons are sitting inside of a crate. Now I went ahead and cleaned up the sides a little bit. You can see here that I'm adding some ribbon around it. And then after I did that, I went ahead and came in with my stamp, and I'm just going to stamp down Farm Fresh right onto those wood sticks. And then I decided to rough up the crate just a little bit and broke a couple pieces off. For this DIY, we are going to be using this darling template for a lemon, and we are going to be cutting that out, the lemon and the leaf, and you're going to put it on whatever yellow fabric you would like. You can even do this on green and make a lime instead. I'm just going to double up my fabric and cut around it, and after I've got a couple of them, I went ahead and moved over to my leaf and did the same thing, because we want to have a front and a back. And now I'm just taking my hot glue and coming around the sides, gluing those edges together for those that don't sew. If you sew, by all means, you can sew with your sewing machine around the edges. And then I'm just going to stuff it, and then I'm going to close it. So you can see here that I'm pinching the fabric together for a real quick look. And again, you can sew this, but I find that with these type of projects so little, the hot glue does work pretty well. And so I would recommend doing it this way if you're looking for a fun, fast project. And then once it's all done, I went ahead and took some twine up at the top, wrapped it around a few times, and then tied a bow. Now, this could be so cute if you made a whole bunch of these and put these on a garland. I had that idea after I had got working with this and made these two separate ones. I thought, how cute would it be to do even more and to make it with a garland? I think that would be so adorable. Once my bow was in place, I went ahead and glued my leaves, the front and the back, together, and then I added them to the back of the lemon, and it was ready to be displayed. This DIY is a look for less project. Now, I could not believe that these were so expensive, and all it really is a couple of pieces of wood that are painted to look just like it. So I went ahead and cut those pieces outside from some old scrap wood that I happen to have on hand, and each one of the faces of these blocks are a different color. So I'm going to go with a white, and then a really pretty icy blue, and then the very last one is a tan color. I really love trying to color match. It's one of my favorite things to do when it comes to painting. So I'm just doing a really nice one coat on the front of these blocks because I wanted to have that rustic distressed look that you saw in the inspiration. And then for the very last one, I'm just adding in some more of the lighter color to make sure that it matches. Once I had that all painted, I came around on the back side with a really dark slate brownish gray color, and this looks just like the one from the Inspiration. I'm just going to go all around all the sides and around the back, and then I did that on all of them so that they all had that same look. Now this particular wood came from the wall between our living room and our kitchen when I ripped it down myself. So I have so much extra wood on hand all the time because of that one DIY that I did. And now I wanted to show you all, I know some of you are really nervous to hand letter paint and some of you still don't have a cutting vinyl machine yet. So if you have stamps on hand, I like to use an acrylic block and acrylic stamps. And I'm just going to test it out first with the paint to make sure it's adhering smoothly to the acrylic stamp. And then I'm just going to stamp it right on. This is a great way to get lettering on your projects without feeling like you have to be really good at hand painting or buying a really expensive machine. Now I will say I do love my big expensive machine, my Cricut, but I definitely want you to know that there are other options. So here I am, I'm going through and I'm stamping on all of their different quotes, and by the end it looks exactly like the Inspiration, and I did this project for free. So just know that there are so many fun projects out there that don't cost anything. This DIY has a free printable for you all to grab. Today we're going to be working with the blue hydrangeas. It'll be linked over on my website where it's virus free and easy to grab. So that link is down below in my description box to go and get it. Now we're going to be using 2 of these large canvases from the Dollar Tree. I'm pretty sure there's 2 in a pack. I could be wrong, but it should cost us about $1 to maybe about $2.50 to make these projects that we're about to make right now. So I'm going to go ahead and print out my printer, cut it down to size, and then now I'm going to spray some hairspray on it because it really does lock in the ink onto the paper. Now I'm finding the center point of my frame, or my canvas I mean, and now I'm going to just come in with my hot glue and I'm just going to glue that down. Now I did do a little dollop right in the middle, and I'm working fast so that it doesn't make the paper all lumpy, that the glue doesn't start to dry. I'm making sure that the line, when I put it down, I can smooth it out so it's nice and flat against the canvas. Now I'm going to take some more scrap wood that I had on hand. I actually have a friend in our neighborhood. I was driving by and she waved me down while they were cleaning out their garage and said, "Heidi, I have this big pile of wood. Do you want all of these different stakes?" Which, yes, I love when people give me free wood. So I went ahead and measured out the corners because I wanted these corners to be mitered together in the corners, and I'm just using my miter box and I'm cutting it out. Now you can see that I'm not doing a straight middle cut. I'm cutting at an angle, which is what's going to allow them to miter into each other, which is going to be so cool having this angle cut, and it's going to make it look so high end. I can't even tell you how much online stores, high-end stores charge for artwork like this, and we're basically doing it for the cost of ink, scrap wood that someone gave to me, and the background canvas from the Dollar Tree. So I mean, like, it is so affordable to do these projects yourself and have a beautiful high-end looking home without paying a ton of money. Friends, I try so hard to convince people, don't ever pay those big prices. So now I've decided I wanted to go through and create more of a whitewashed look to the wood, so it takes down some of the yellow warm tone to it, make it more of a high-end farmhouse coastal feel. And then I decided to come in with a tan paint to just make the canvas look more like it was covered in fabric, more high-end looking than it just being a canvas. I went around that a couple times, dried it with my heat gun, and now that my wood's all dry and done, I can go ahead and add in some E6000 and some hot glue and just pop my frame right into place, making sure things line up properly. And then once that was done and all glued in place, I wanted to make sure that nothing pops off over time. So I just flipped it over and then I stapled it down on the back side with my staple gun. And then I came in with some brown packing paper on the back just to clean up the backside so it has a nice clean finish. I forgot to show that part. But before I put down that finishing paper, I took a rope and I'm just going to flatten down the rope. I untwisted it and I'm going to just glue it down into place as flat as I can, so that way we have an ability to hang it up. And then I did not want to finish it with the rope. So the reason why I like using the rope with the ribbon is it gives it the structure without the ribbon collapsing and looking kind of funky or bunched. So you can see here that I'm just taking my ribbon and lightly gluing the ribbon onto the rope to create that structure without it having it being bunched or funny or pulling weird. And then the rope is staying in place and it allows it to hang up really nicely and very high end looking. So once I had my ribbon nice and flat the way I wanted it to, I went ahead and made a couple little cuts and then added a bow right onto the top, allowing me to be able to hang it up without any issues with the bow. This DIY's inspiration comes from Antique Farmhouse, one of my favorite online places, and I knew that we could make this pot for so much more affordable. Now they do give you 2 pots for the $42, but I'm gonna just use this tall bucket from the Dollar Tree that I picked up and I've had on hand. I took off the sticker on the bottom with my heat gun, and now I'm just unwrapping all of the twine they had around it. And then to take down the adhesive that it had stuck to the bucket and those little fibers, I just used my sanding block from the Dollar Tree. Now I'm going to use this wire that was left over from a project from last year. It had a star on it that I popped off. I always keep these types of wires because they're great for projects like this, and they're really strong, durable wires. So you can see here that I bent out 2 of the ends, and then I'm turning it into almost like a little rainbow arch. Now the best way to explain this is I'm going to bend it in so it looks like a handle on a dresser drawer. And then at the middle point, as if it was pushing into the dresser itself, I then make it become a frowny face. So you can see that the legs are coming out and then there's the arch for the rainbow. So I did that twice, and then I'm going to line up where I want it to be able to go into my bucket for the inspiration picture. And I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile and just punch out 2 holes. I love this tool, friends. I say it all the time. Everyone should have one of these in their craft room. They're so friendly to your hand if you have a hard time squeezing things. I love this tool. It goes through metal and plastic, all sorts of materials, wood. I love it. I've had mine for years and it is still holding up after like 10 years of having it. And then after that, I just put the wires, the ends that we bent in, I put those through the holes. I'm clamping them into place. And then I'm going to go ahead and just bend it and manipulate it into the spacing that I want it so it looks just like the inspiration. Now at this point it's ready to be painted. So I took it outside and I spray painted it a creamy ivory white. And then I'm now going to go with the colors for the inspiration. I will say that I ended up doing more of a sky blue versus a teal baby soft blue color. I wanted it to be more of a blue, sky blue color. So I'm coming in at the very top with the blue, and then I'm creating an ombre effect. So I'm blending in the white from the bottom and the blue from the top going into the middle. As I get to certain points that I like the way it looks, I come in with my heat gun to dry it, and then I keep blending more until I get that desired ombre. Really pretty. It almost reminds me of like the ocean and the sea foam that comes up with it. I just love how that looks so much on this bucket. Now I'm going to take a coal gray brown color and I'm going to just tap around it to give it that enamel look that the inspiration had. And I'm just going along the bottom, the handles, and the top. And then I'm going to bring in a toothbrush. My daughter asked me just the other day why I had a toothbrush in my craft room, and this is why, because I use a toothbrush to get that speckled paint look on my projects. And then to do the finishing touches, I'm just coming back in with some white and just creating some layers on this project. Now, can you believe this inspiration? I think it looks so much like it. Had I used more of a teal color, it would have been spot on, but I wanted more of a blue color to match my decor. $1 versus $42, and even if I only had 2 of them, that is still me saving a ton of money. I start by taking my tape measure and I'm measuring out the length of the whole thing, finding the half point, and then creating my cut line. You're going to see my tape measure fall to the side, but I still was able to get a clean straight line. So then once I had that, I went ahead and had my husband hold the other side because, friends, I need to work on my wood cutting area. This is my janky way I do it, but I definitely would recommend clamping it down. Then I brought it inside. And now I'm just going to sand down those rough edges where I just use my jigsaw to make sure everything's smooth so that I won't get any splinters while I'm working with it, or anybody when they pick it up. Then I'm going to take it and lay out the pieces how I want them to look. And then with a whole bunch of these handles that I'm always cutting off of my long painter sticks, I'm going to use these as supports on the back to bring all the pieces together and have a nice clean look on the back side. I used some glue, by the way, before I stapled them down. And then I flipped it over and I'm going to use water and a teal color paint first because I'm trying to match the color that was on our inspiration that was really expensive. I love doing these kind of look for less dupes because it's amazing how much stores charge for things when all you have to do is just have the right tools and you can make pretty much anything you see at a store. So now I'm coming back in with some more of a limey or green color to get that distressed look. And as it dried, it gave it the most beautiful green color. Now I'm coming back in with some dry brushing of white paint to really bring up that wood grain. And then I'm going to come back in with some brown and distress all along the edges to give it that farmhouse weathered look. At that point, I was pretty happy with how it looked. And now I'm going to take my large ruler and with as straight line as possible, I'm going to create my Choose Happy letters with a pencil. I like using a pencil because it doesn't bleed through the white paint whenever I use it. And I'm just taking my time to get the letters that I like. Once I was all done sketching those out, I came back in and I'm now just going to go over it with my white paint. Now friends, I just want to encourage you all to love your homes. Take the time to make it feel like you and make it feel like a safe landing place for your family members, those that visit, friends. I just think our homes are a space that should always represent us, especially in this world that just seems so crazy. And I think it's one of the reasons why I was so drawn to this Choose Happy, because I truly believe that it's that state of mind where we choose to be happy and we keep moving forward and we keep finding that sunshine that God provides us. Once it was all dry, I came back in with my sanding block from the Dollar Tree and I just sanded it up just a little bit. And then after that, it was all done. Can you believe this? We made this for $3 versus $47.99. Our project today is going to be using these printables that I have created for you. 4 of these 11 by 14 frames and some foam core because our inspiration has come from Pottery Barn. I could not believe that they were charging $521 for these prints. The sizing on the frames is pretty much the exact same, and I'm doing this project for $6. So you're going to take the backing from the frame, you're going to trace it onto some foam core, and you're going to just simply cut out 4 of those. Then you're going to take your frame outside and you're going to spray all 4 of them whatever color you want. I went with a pretty tan taupey color, and then you're going to come back inside while that's drying, cut down some strips of cardstock. I did it where it's 1 by 12 inches long, and then you're simply going to glue a border around your free printable. You could go through the efforts of matting it and cutting out the foam core, but friends, this looks just as good, and people typically cannot tell that it's not an actual store-bought mat. It looks almost exactly the same. So then what you're going to do is you're going to pop your foam core inside the frame, and you're doing it this way so that you have a nice straight print. You're going to go ahead and glue that in, and then once you've got that all straightened out for the 4 art pieces, you're going to take that back out, insert your glass once your frame is dry, and then you're going to put your foam core artwork right back inside. And then on the back, I just used some twine to create a hang up option. For this DIY, the inspiration came from a $299 wreath, and I'm going to make mine for $250. Now let me tell you why it was that highly priced, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. I ended up picking up some of these florals from the Dollar Tree, one of their largest wreath forms. I think it's 24 inches. And then this is what drew the price up just a little bit. I got one of these long garlands from Hobby Lobby, and well, it's not a coupon anymore, but it was half off, so it was $12.99. And then you can see some of these picks I had on hand. I'm just going to use some little sprigs here and there. And then I actually used 4 packs of these lemons. And then I didn't show it, but I had 2 long skewer sticks, and that's why the price was driven up on this wreath. But again, it's still so much more affordable than what the inspiration was. So now I'm going to take the garland, and this is the greatest way to get greenery around on your wreath. I'm just going to zip tie it all the way around, and I love how this greenery looks, which is why I went with this one. And now I'm going to come back in with these peonies that they had at the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to bring in that wire long enough to be able to loop it around that joint where the zip tie is, and then I'm just going to lock it right into place with some hot glue. Then I come in with some of it's kind of like a buttery yellow rose that the Dollar Tree had at the beginning of spring. I really wanted everything to be very light and airy on this wreath. I thought it would be really pretty. Now the inspiration does have a lot more florals, like a buttery yellow rose packed in, but I decided to go a little bit lighter and make it a little bit more my own that I liked for myself. But if you want to copy exactly the inspiration, it would probably push the wreath up to about $30, adding in some more peony roses, and they have some buttery yellow roses as well at the Dollar Tree, so you could definitely add in a little bit more. Then I brought in some daisies and then some of these wispy yellow florals. I thought these were so cute and so dainty, the way that they would just blow in the wind on my front door. And then I brought back in that long floral here that you see me sticking in. I got these at Hobby Lobby a long time ago, and I just am forever like cutting off little stems of it. And I'm just going to add that down in there, and I always like to secure everything with a tiny little dot of hot glue. Now here comes that dowel stick or the skewer stick, where I'm just cutting it down because I want to make sure my lemons don't fall off of this wreath. So I'm just going to poke it in there and hot glue those into place. That way it has something for the hot glue to lock onto, because these, if you try to put hot glue on the lemons, it's too slick of a surface. It will just come right off over time. So I'm really always a big fan of making sure when you make something, take the time to make sure that it's actually locked into place so that it doesn't pop off. So I put 3 clustered together. Now on the inspiration you'll see that those are kind of scattered around with the roses, but I really liked this look. And again, just because you find some inspiration doesn't mean it has to look exactly like it. I think that's the fun part about crafting, is you have a jump off point and then you can make it look however you want. So I added on this big bow, and here is the finished look. Look at how much money we saved. Once I laid out my large garden bags, I actually just cut these open and lay them down on the ground, and they make the greatest spray painting surface. You can see that sometimes I have some dust lines blow over, but I've been able to get those up before with a scrub brush. So I'm just going to give these all a nice coat of white paint all the way over them, so that way when we use the printable that I'm using today, it's going to be able to have a nice base to be put on and you don't see the green popping out around the corners. Once they were all dry, I brought them back inside, and this is the free printable. I designed these myself and I'm giving them to all of you today for free. All you have to do is just click the link down below and it'll take you over to my website where you can download them directly from my website, which is fire is free and safe. And I've made them in 3 different sizes, a large, medium, and small PDF printable where you can download all of them and be able to use them for your project. You also could use them for so many other things too. So I wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of overhang for everybody just in case your boxes are different sizes. Then I traced around my box with a pencil onto the actual printable to get the exact size. And now I'm just cutting them down with my paper trimmer. I'll link my paper trimmer and my tape gun down below. I get asked questions about these two all the time, which ones are my favorite, and these are my 2 favorite paper products to be using for tools. And then I'm now just going to simply adhere them to my box, whichever patterns I want. And then once it's all done, they stack away so easily whenever you're not using them. This DIY is going to be using this old pumpkin sign and then some of these jumbo popsicle sticks that I pick up from Walmart, and then one of these lemons from the Dollar Tree. Now we're going to give the front of this a shiplap look, so I pulled off that little raffia bow and I'm just going to cut these down to size so that they fit across this sign on the front. That way you can still mount it on the wall because it has the teeth hook on the back. For the very last one, I noticed that it was just a little bit too long, so I went ahead and cut that down and it fit on there nice and perfect. Then I took my hot glue and I glued them all down into place. And you can see here, friends, this is like pennies to make. This is what I tell people all the time. You can have a beautiful home, a fresh, new space with hardly any money spent. I had so much fun making this one, and it was super easy for any new crafter. Once those were all glued down, I took my X-Acto knife and I'm just cutting my lemon not in half, but almost more so in more like a third, but even less than that. I'm so bad with fractions. I'm so sorry. But you can see that I didn't do the halfway point. I came a little bit past it because I wanted one to be a little bit bigger than the other. Once I got it apart, because they're foam all the way through, I'm taking my scissors and I'm just snipping it out so it's going to lay flat. And then I realized if I rubbed it against my cutting mat, all that roughness from me cutting on it all the time helped it smooth out the bottom so I could glue it onto my sign with no issues in it popping up. While those were done and just sitting there, I went in with some white paint and I'm going to paint over those popsicle sticks, but you can do whatever color you want. Once it was all done, I did take a wipey, by the way, and I wiped off some of it because I wanted to have more of a whitewashed look to those sticks. I made sure it was really dry, and now I'm coming back in with some E6000 and some hot glue, because sometimes hot glue doesn't lock in all the way to foam depending on how much buoyancy there is to it. So I'm using both to make sure that it doesn't come off over time. Now I have a lot of friends on here I know that like lemons, and I thought that this would just be such a fun one for a kitchen or even anywhere in your home, whatever your home's theme is. And that's the reason I wanted to do some lemon projects today. I thought that this would just be such a cute, sweet one to do. And again, super easy. I mean, look, a lot of these things I already had in my craft room and I'm using from past seasons. So then I came in with some boxwood, some florals, a little gingham ribbon right inside there, and I just played with it until I was happy with it. I wanted it to look like it was on a branch of a tree. And then I came in with some stickers, and I just put on there the letters that spelled out Farm Fresh. And once I was happy with it, it's ready to be hung up. This DIY's inspiration came from Walmart. I saw this really cute banner for $13.16 and I thought, what? We could make that for pennies. Like, it's crazy sometimes what I see stores charging. I know that there's manual labor involved because a long time ago I owned a scrapbook company and we used to mass produce our own products, and I get that, but like even then the markup was so crazy on this little banner that I wanted to show you all that you could get this look for less, so much less. So here I am, I'm just taking some twine. You saw me tie a little loop knot on the end so we can hang up our banner. I think that's always important whenever you make banners. Always give it a nice little loop knot to hang it up. And then I cut some burlap and I'm just going to fold it right over on it. And once I've got that all locked in place and I'm happy that the twine isn't going to move around, I get the spacing right, I just add a little more glue, and then I'm going to take my scissors and cut off the end. Now we're going to repeat that going all the way down. Now this is where I made mine a little bit different than what you saw in the inspiration picture. Instead of doing a dovetail, I decided to use more of an angle point coming down, not going in. And this is going to be more of a banner look versus the dovetail banner look. I just thought this was really cute, and I wanted specifically for my decor shelf in my office. I thought it would be really cute right now for the summertime. Then I'm coming in with some lighter fabric that I had on hand, and I'm just going to fold it in half and cut out a whole bunch of hearts like the inspiration, and we're just going to glue those down and put them on. It was that easy to get this look. I mean, the savings that took place for this is insane. For this DIY, I took it outside and I spray painted a box from the Dollar Tree. I gave it 2 coats of white paint just to make sure the pattern was really covered and not seen. I love spray painting on these boxes more than I do using regular paint with a brush. I just feel like the finish is always so much better. So just know, for me personally, I like spray painting them and then they dry so much faster. So these are all the greeneries you're going to see me using. You can see here that I took my lemons and I put a skewer stick that I cut down to size, and I stuck those in the lemons and glued them into place. And now I'm going to add some E6000 and some hot glue onto my foam square that I'm going to be pushing down into the box. Once I've got that down in there, I went ahead and I poked in a whole bunch of holes so that I can get in this boxwood into those spots. And I just pulled these off of a long garland from Hobby Lobby that I purchased, and it lasts me forever because I'm always just picking off of it and using it for my decor pieces. What a way to save a ton of money by just buying it on the long garlands and getting them half off when Hobby Lobby has them half off. And then I'm going to come in with some peony flowers and just all sorts of little cute spriggy type flowers that are just light and airy. It makes me think of summertime so much, and it really is giving you that farmhouse look without it being too over the top. I do love bright colors in my home, but I know some of you really want that farmhouse look to stay throughout the whole year, and you only want to add in maybe one color, which is a yellow color for the summertime. And this is a great way to do it. You keep your colors really neutral, and then you bring in that one pop of color, just like I'm doing here. So at this point, I'm just putting in those lemons where I wanted them to be, right in the center of this decor floral piece. And then at that point I decided I wanted to put a buffalo check ribbon around the front because I thought the yellow and the black and white would just be so pretty together and really just finish this look to give it a store-bought feel to it. This is the thing, friends, I say it all the time. Whether you're a new crafter or an experienced crafter, whichever one you are, there are so many fun things to try out there, and I hope that you will give some of my DIYs a try. I try to always be mindful of all the different levels of crafters to give everybody a chance to make something beautiful for their home. And then last, we're just going to add a bow, and it's ready to be displayed. I hope you enjoyed this hour-long video of summer decor inspiration and that you feel excited to go and craft in your own spaces. Leave a comment down below to let me know which one you liked, which one you think you will try, and I'm going to recommend a couple of videos right here at the end for you to check out if you enjoyed this one. Thanks so much for stopping by, and until the next episode, bye friends!